you're talking about?
Very spiritual.
Can you explain that? Because that's kind of hard for a lay person to understand.
Very spiritual and very material also.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, billions of dollars now are being arranged to help facilitate people who have heart troubles, because insurance companies and doctors are realizing that intimacy is working, that people who feel cared for, who feel loved, that it makes a difference, and it's a financial consideration. We are spiritual beings who are naturally loving. When we do not experience that love from others, or we do not give that love, it produces all kind of inauspiciousness, all kind of unnatural things happen when we do not do the natural. But now people are often afraid to love because they're afraid that if they really give themselves, they'll be abused. They're afraid that if they try to love, they'll not get the reciprocation. And in most cases, they have not experienced real loving care. And it's hard to try to be something and to act upon that when all around you the opposite, when all around you the environment, sociologically, politically, economically, is all saying, live for yourself, get what you can for you or your group, and do it the best way you can, and that is success.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to get out of that kind of paradigm.
That sounds like selfishness to me.
That's selfishness.
And selfishness, then, if I'm making a stretch with what you're teaching here,
Mm-hmm.
and selfishness has a high correlation with disease, illness.
That's right, because when we're not feeling protected, cared for, we're not feeling intimacy, then we send that message throughout our bodies.
So if you're in a relationship, though you're having a lot of sexual transmission and it's good,
Mm-hmm.
feels good,
Sure.
but without that intimacy there, that's at least one criteria, that or signal, red flag,
Yes.
that love is not present.
That's right.
And if the essence of God is not there, and I don't know how we recognize that, and I'm going to ask you that question, but let's say in my global understanding of what a creator is, if the essence of the creator is not there, you don't have love. But
That is really important, Percy. And that's kind of a bottom line.
Mhm.
We really can't be genuinely loving without spiritual connection.
Well, how do we know when we have it?
Because, well, two ways. First, because we're servants of God, and we're part of the process of God, and our real essence is that of spirituality. Then if we try to have deep relationship without recognizing our essence, then it's all circuitous.
Mm-hmm.
And so it all has to come back to the nucleus, spiritual nucleus, a God-conscious nucleus.
Mm-hmm.
Now, since we even often use religion as like a profession, or we use it for business, so no wonder even people who are so-called religious are still not feeling so much love, because they are being more religious than spiritual, or they're being more involved in the ritual and the external rather than the internal.
Okay, let me ask you a toughie. You told me I could ask you anything, and I'm going to ask you this tough one, because I know I got some brothers out there and some people out there that are struggling with this. Infidelity in their marital relationships, and are convinced that they love both partners. How does the whole concept of lust and love fit into the notion of infidelity and incest and all of these things that are the results of sexual energy in a relationship?
Whether it's a heterogeneous or homogeneous relationship, etc., what is not acceptable by natural laws and spiritual laws is adultery, fornication, illicit sex.
Okay. That's pretty bottom line.
Illicit sex is always unhealthy. Because
What is illicit sex?
illicit sex is when there is sex where the natural connection is not able to come from that. When people come together for union, the natural thing that comes out of that love and that real union is procreation.
Mm-hmm.
Is something, a creation that comes from those two beings coming together to honor each other.
Mm-hmm.
When we have that kind of situation without being ready to honor the life that comes from that wonderful connection, then it is not fully natural.
So all that stuff that goes on in the red light districts across the nation is illicit sex.
It's illicit, and it's the opposite of what sex should be about. Sex should be under wonderful environments where people think about it before they even involve themselves. It's because it's like a festival that they're ready to participate in. It should be under nice music. To be with someone who you're really ready to be with. It should be where you're ready to take the consequences of that, and then you have wonderful connection based on really raising consciousness on the planet, rather than being another person who involves himself in bringing down consciousness by minimizing humanity, minimizing real relationship.
Okay. I perceive in you a great presence of caring, selflessness, and humanity. I also know you're a very spiritual man. You are a scholar of the Bible, so you have a command of that. And we know biblically that there are places in the Bible that speak to the issue of homosexuality. We move it up into our day and time, gay and lesbianism. And yet, in our population, some demographers say there's at least 10% of the population that fit into the category of gay or lesbian. I'm not casting a judgment here, but people who are gay and who are lesbian enter love relationships with each other all the time. My guess is some of it is lust, but how do you explain that in the context of the Spiritual Warrior 2 transform? I'm having a tough time with this. This is a tough subject that people have difficulty with, but lust into love when you're talking about a homogeneous or homosexual encounter.
I get letters from all over the world on the Spiritual Warrior 2 book, even though it's only been out for a few months. And many of those letters are from the gay community, particularly those who are spiritually inclined. And so we explain some things about gay and lesbian considerations in our first chapter. Now, we'll emphasize first that everybody's looking for love. It doesn't matter, heterosexual, homosexual, and love is a real issue. We also explain some things in relationship to reincarnation, because there are sociological, physiological, and there are spiritual reasons for homosexuality. And many of these metaphysical and spiritual reasons most people are not aware of. So we try to help individuals to understand that, because there's sometimes someone who is having a material masculine body, but is having a mental and psychological consciousness that of a female. So we have cases where we have a woman who is captured or caught up in a man's body, or a man who's caught up in a woman's body, based on previous life's activities and the consciousness that carries on from that. Say, for instance, real brief, someone in a last life was very masculine, weightlifter, big champion, weighing 250 pounds, lots of muscles. That person was so much thinking on those terms, involving themselves in that kind of physical activity. In the next life, they come back in a female's body, looking like a model, very feminine, but they'll still have sometimes some of that masculine conscience from a previous life that's now within that feminine body.
You just opened up a whole big arena, and I didn't miss it.
There are many factors.
Come back